Let's be honest, faith is just dumb. Welcome to reality, theists. You won't like that, but there you go. Of course, lots has been written about the importance of faith, mostly by shysters with their hands out for your money, but the whole thing is really sad when you think about it, and unfortunately, most of them never do. If you wanted a good example of why it's so worthless, stay tuned. This comes from the Wanderlust Worker blog, and I've got no clue when it was written because none of these entries are actually dated, so who knows, could be any time. But it purports to give 5 reasons why faith is important. And I'm about to debunk every single one of them and show why faith is absolutely pointless to anybody with any kind of a grasp on reality. Of course, the religious want nothing at all to do with reality, do they? Because reality is scary. They'd rather live in a childish fantasy world in their heads. And that's why all of this is just so dumb. So this is where we're going to have problems right up front, because the religious are starting off with a faith-based belief system, and therefore they're obviously going to value faith whether it's actually worth anything or not. As the quote from the very first screen says, "To one who has faith, no explanation is necessary. To one without faith, no explanation is possible." But this goes right back to what I always say. But I want it to be true. That doesn't actually mean anything, does it? It is true or not true regardless of your feelings. Your feelings don't actually mean anything. That's something the religious can't seem to get through their heads, and that's the core of their disconnect. Anyone who believes because they want to believe, they're doing intelligence completely wrong. Anyway, mostly we're going to look at the actual reasons, but I just wanted to take a look at the first part of their setup just so you understand where they're coming from. If you want to pause and read what's on the screen, or if you want to go and read the actual article, by all means feel free. The link, as always, is in the description. So anyway, let's just get to it. Sometimes, when things don't go according to plan, we lose faith, not only in ourselves, but also in any potential outcome in our lives. Failure will do that to you. When we experience life's monumental failures, it's easy to lose hope and even faith. Now, this is supposed to be about why faith is so important, but that's only showing why faith is so utterly pointless. It's just emotional children trying to get their fifis coddled, and that's really just dumb. This is about having realistic expectations, and these people have no interest in any of that at all, do they? Maybe you shouldn't have faith. Maybe you should actually try reality, because having a tighter grasp on reality might get you closer to the truth. And the truth actually matters. Did you ever think of that? Well, of course they don't, because they don't actually care if anything that they believe is really true. They just want to feel good. They want things to go a certain way, and when it doesn't go the way that they wish, they'll just look for bald rationalizations for why it just doesn't work out that way. Natural disasters become, well, God's mad at gay people. Personal tragedies are, well, I must have done something wrong. They refuse to acknowledge the simple fact that we're just not that important in the grand scheme of things, and sometimes, shit just happens. But I don't want shit to happen. Well, too bad. That's the way reality works. Grow up and deal with it. Those that can do, and those that can't, they just turn to woo. While faith can be hard at the best of times, faith is the knowledge deep down inside that things will get better. It's taking the next step when you can't see the entire staircase. Simply put, life would fail to have reason if we didn't have faith. No, It's not. It's the blind belief that it will just get better if you do what a book of mythology tells you to do. Count the hits and ignore the misses. Once you start to recognize what you're doing wrong, it's impossible not to see it everywhere. These are people who are positively terrified of the real world. It isn't providing what they want, so they just make up another wholly nonsensical reality that they can spend their fantasy time in. But that's not actually what's going on. They're still beholden to reality whether they like it or not. They just play make-believe and invent fanciful stories to explain why they're not getting what they want. Because they're just sinners or some stupid crap like that. But that's not how anything actually works, is it? Because these people are just dumb. So we're just going to jump down to the actual reasons because most of their faith talk is just painfully stupid. You wouldn't drive a car if you didn't have faith. But that's dumb. We don't have faith when we drive a car. We have justified true belief that the things that we're actually seeing are there. Faith is definitely not required. So let's see what points they actually have to make, because otherwise this is going to take forever. The mind is an incredibly powerful tool. It can be used for good, but also go to waste when neglected or abused. In times of trouble, we tend to move away from positivity. We go from a state of abundance to a state of lack. But faith is the tool that helps replenish abundance in the heart and the spirit, not just in the mind. But that seems to be another one of those cases where they're so close to the truth, but they just can't possibly get there because it just terrifies them, and they just turn and run away. They are wasting their minds instead of simply acknowledging the reality in which they actually live. They'd rather invent a childish fantasy land and pretend that things aren't what they actually are instead of just, living in reality. Faith doesn't change anything. In fact, faith is the actual culprit here. It is what is actually responsible for these wholly irrational views of the real world. Faith is not something that you should be proud of. You ought to be pretty ashamed. Just saying. Faith is the pathway to abundance, so be sure to hold it in the forefront of your mind. Don't be afraid to expect the very best for yourself. This isn't about being selfish or aimlessly wishing for things. This is about the true, utter, deep down belief in your heart and your soul that things will improve and that you deserve the very best in life. Yeah, except it's not. This is sounding an awful lot like prosperity gospel bullcrap. We looked at that con job a little while ago back on the Patreon side. Ask God for whatever you want, and if you wish hard enough and you give us enough money, God will provide. Except it doesn't work that way in reality, does it? How many people out there are starving and praying for food only to starve to death? How many people out there are sick and in the hospital and suffering and praying to get better, yet they don't? How hard can it really be to call in a divine pizza delivery or a medical intervention? Yet tons and tons of people die every single day from easily curable diseases and easily fixable situations. Most of them are praying their brains out, literally, to whatever imaginary friend they happen to believe in. There's never been a single demonstrable case in the history of mankind where any God has actually come through. Why is that? Whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Yeah, that's wrong right there. Try getting cerebral palsy or multiple sclerosis. They're not going to kill you, at least not right away, but they sure the hell don't make you stronger, do they? This is an absurd misunderstanding of how reality actually works, because these people don't want to live in reality. But let's see what else they have to say. There's a powerful story in the Bible called the Book of Job. The story is about a man named Job who was astute as any man could be. He believed strongly in God and held high his faith. But the story goes that one day the devil paid God a visit. The topic of discussion? Job's faith. But that's kind of the problem, though. It's just a story. There's no evidence that any of it ever happened at all, that there ever was a Job, or certainly not that there were ever two childish, supernatural, mythological beings fighting over who could screw him over the worst. This is what happens when you read books of mythology without having any critical faculties whatsoever. In fact, if you understand how religion actually functions, it's no surprise whatsoever that they push blind faith. It's how they keep people from asking difficult questions. It might get in the way of their gravy train otherwise. So, this agreement began when God began taking things away from Job's life. Over the course of these trials, Job loses everything that he had worked so hard to create over the years: his livestock, all his money, his family, his friends, and his health. However, even when his wife told him that he should curse God, Job didn't. He remained faithful. And in the Aesop's fable, the fox couldn't jump high enough to get the grapes. That doesn't mean it actually ever happened. This is a morality tale, and really not one that the religious ought to be proud of, because here we see the capricious and cruel nature of God. He's got a bet with a demon, and therefore they conspire to mess Job's life up. Now, sure, he supposedly gets most of his stuff back in the end, but that's not really an excuse. What about all the pain and suffering that he had to go through along the way? What about everybody who died? They didn't come back from the dead. Instead, he gets a brand new wife, and they have 10 more children together. But that doesn't make the suffering and the pain that his other wife and his other kids underwent, does it? Would you be willing to live a life of pain, suffering, and agony, losing absolutely everybody who was ever important to you, if you thought that you might get something similar back in the end? No guarantees, of course. Nobody promised Job a thing. But would you delude yourself into taking all of the agony and the pain and the suffering with no end in sight, just in case it might turn out well for you in the end? And the answer for me is, hell no. God is a dick. What else is new? Going through life and all of its ups and downs can take a toll on us. At times, it's enough to question our very existence. But through all the trials and tribulations we might face, it's faith that gives us that helping hand. It works to guide us in the right direction, moving us towards and allowing us to discover our purpose in life. This is, in fact, the inherent laziness of the religious mindset. They can't handle actually doing the hard work on their own to figure out what it is that they want to do with their lives. They have to have some imaginary magic man in the sky tell them what the hell they're supposed to go and do with themselves, and that is utterly pathetic. This assumes that there is a right direction in the first place, that you don't have reasonably free reign in what you choose to do, and that whatever consequences that might arise from your choices, those are completely going to be on your shoulders. Yet they're scared of all that, aren't they? That's because these are immature little children who would rather have an imaginary friend issue dictates than to just work it out for themselves. Whether anyone likes it or not, that's what everybody has to do. If you make mistakes, you suffer the consequences. If you make good decisions, you reap the rewards. Welcome to the real world. Yet these people refuse to accept the facts about reality, and then they make excuses when everything goes horribly, horribly wrong. Well, I guess God just screwed you over on your purpose for life, right? Oh, right, of course. They don't blame God for that, because bald rationalizations are a bitch, right? Everything in life is far easier to get through when we have faith. It's the guiding light that helps push us towards our purpose. No, it doesn't. In fact, it just makes things worse. This is telling yourself nonsensical stories and engaging in pure confirmation bias because it makes you happier than just dealing with the real world. This is where the inherent self-deception that is part and parcel with religion comes in. Faith doesn't make life easier. It just makes you blind to the difficulties, inventing imaginary excuses for why things don't go the way that you want them to, instead of realizing that you're the one who failed to make things better. No, that doesn't mean that you're automatically in control of everything, because life isn't all about you. Sometimes you get cancer through absolutely no fault of your own. Welcome to reality. It's not part of God's magical plan. It's just crap happening. You're just not that important. Learn to deal with it. It's easy to allow stress, anxiety, and fear to run our lives. We go from moment to moment, worried about one thing or another. Sometimes those worries manifest themselves into highly stressful situations, causing not only mental anguish, but physical problems as well. There's a clear and documented connection between stress and the increased likelihood of disease and illness. Yet, the more religious a person tends to be, the more stressed out that I've seen them. That's just my experience, of course, but the most fundamentalist theists out there, they tend to be the most worried that something they're going to do is going to piss off their imaginary friends in the sky and send them into eternal perdition. They tend to see God as a vengeful, nearly malevolent being whose plan is inscrutable, and they're little more than ants to be crushed beneath his capricious heel. Honestly, go listen to a sermon in an ultra-evangelical church sometime. There isn't a lot of hope there. It's mostly fear. These people are terrified of their God. How does that lower stress, anxiety, and fear? I don't know, you tell me. Learn to harbor faith and use it to eliminate stress, anxiety, and fear. Think back to situations in the past when you made it through something you thought was insurmountable. Believe and expect that good things will happen, and they will. This isn't about ignoring your problems. This is about knowing that your situation will improve deep down inside your heart and your soul. Now, ask yourself if those situations, did the solution come completely out of the blue, or if you were actually responsible for getting yourself out of it. Because I'm willing to bet 9 times out of 10, that's what happened. Religion is all about giving unearned credit to an imaginary man in the sky, rather than actually taking the credit for your own hard work. Remember, if you sit there and pray for a job just doesn't appear on your doorstep. You still gotta go apply. You have to earn it. Faith actually makes things worse. It tells you that you're actually incapable, and when you prove that's wrong, it tells you that you didn't actually do it at all. I mean, how stupid is that? Unimaginably. Faith is the pathway to finding solutions in life. Keep in mind that human beings were made to thrive, not just survive. If you're only surviving, there's far greater in store for you. There is a pathway in all of your solutions, and that pathway is steeped in faith and the expectation of greater things to come in time. Which actual solutions come about solely by faith? Please give me examples. Keep in mind that human beings weren't made at all. We evolved to fill a particular ecological niche. We're not supposed to do anything but survive until something better comes along and takes our place. Whether that makes you happy or not, that's completely irrelevant. That's the reality that you happen to live in. Now, this seems to be a rather prosperity gospel kind of idea. It's not quite so obvious. They don't seem to have their hand out in any kind of blatant way, or at least not in this article, but it's got that kind of vibe. Also, for anyone who might go and read through the rest of his article, they've got this take this discipline quiz now thing. But the link is broken. I mean, I tried it, but it doesn't work. At least I tried, I guess. It might have been full of, do you give your money to the church crap? But I guess we'll never know. If you really want something in life, and I mean you really want it deep down inside, and you have a strong enough reason you absolutely must achieve it, faith is the thing that helps you to see that through. It's at the core of a persistent heart. Never give up on your hopes and your dreams just because you face some initial setbacks. Lean on your faith as often as possible, and you'll soon come to realize why having unwavering faith is so important in life. But see, if you have all of that, you don't actually need faith, do you? If you really want something and you have a strong enough reason and the willpower to see it through, who the hell needs God? Just go do it. Faith is actually an impediment to real success. If you just think that God will provide, nothing will happen because nobody real is taking any steps toward making anything happen. You don't need God. You just need yourself and other people who can help you to achieve your goals. God is just an excuse. He's not a path forward because there's no reason to think that he exists. It's why faith is not a demonstrable path to truth. It's just childish wishful thinking, and trust me, we've all had more than enough of that. If you want to succeed in life, get the hell off your knees and go do something on your own. You'll get a whole lot better results than just sitting there talking to yourself, trust me. So anyhow, I went looking around the blog, and it seems to be kind of a general purpose, wishful thinking, get you success kind of thing. There are articles on how to successfully sell on Amazon, what you should eat and drink, that kind of stuff. Most of it has nothing at all to do with religion, so it seems to be treating faith as just one more way to get smoke blown straight up your skirt, and as such, it kind of seems to be utterly pointless. Now, I've seen plenty of this over the years. I'm sure you have too. People saying, well, you can do it, without actually explaining how. And most of the people who are going, you can do it, they don't actually think you can do it. They think you need help. And unfortunately, a lot of them seem to think that you need imaginary friends, which is just dumb. If you close your eyes and just wish really hard, everything that you ever want will come true. That's the whole secret philosophy that shares so much with religious zealotry. Have faith and God will provide. Except it never ever happens that way. God only provides if you actually go and do all the work. God never comes through without your help. Funny how that works, right? Because it's never actually God. It's you. It's people. It's human beings doing what human beings do. Then religion tells you that you have to give away the credit to some imaginary man in the sky because, fifis. Because you're just not worthy. You're a miserable sinner and only God can provide. Yeah, no, that's dumb. You provide. You might not always be successful, but the only way to succeed is through your own efforts and through the efforts of those around you. Faith is utterly meaningless. Anyone relying on faith, they have some severe mental problems. It's time to grow the hell up and get off your knees. Faith is a path only to failure.